Oh yeah. Feels good. The time has come to enjoy myself.
Hello, greetings, and hi there. This is the Head Speaks podcast, a proud member of the Headcast family. I am your host, Aaron Moss, also known as Brother Head. Welcome to Head Speaks, where I'll be talking about comics, movies, and recent news items that interest me. Basically anything that strikes my fancy. Warning, this podcast may not be family friendly. Head Speaks may contain adult language, adult content, fantasy violence, and nudity. You have been warned. The young, stupid, and easily offended may not want to listen to this headcast. In other words, parental guidance is more than suggested. Now, before we get started today, let's hear a word from a friend of the show.
Kalabak, Tassad, it is I, Darkside. I command you to listen to the Who's Who podcast. Uncover the powers and weaknesses of the Super Friends so that I may destroy them.
Aquaman and Superman, Animal Man and Plastic Man, Firestorm and Nuclear Man, Batman and Hawkman, 2D Man and Hour Man.
Who are all these people, man?
They're all part of the DC Who's Who. Ultra Boy and Booster Gold, Lightning Lass and Hippolyta, Phantom Stranger, Etrick and Arisia and Woozy Winks.
Hey.
What?
What about that one guy?
What guy?
Mr. Pretzel, Mr. Lipstick, Mr. Mitzelfuzzle?
Mr. Mitzi's Pitlick?
Yeah, him.
He's also part of the DC Who's Who.
Who's Who, the definitive podcast of the DC Universe.
Available monthly at Aquaman Shrine, Firestorm Fan, and on iTunes and Stitcher as part of the Fire and Water podcast.
They only mention it briefly, but the Who's Who podcast is part of the Fire and Water podcast. The Fire and Water podcast is our main podcast. It covers the adventures of Firestorm and Aquaman, respectively. It's a great podcast. I definitely recommend it. Go check out the Fire and Water podcast and Who's Who, both by Shag Matthews and Rob Kelly. Great shows. I look forward to them every week. But enough about Rob and Shag. Let's go ahead and get on with my show. Before I begin my show formally, though, a quick question for anyone that's out there that happens to be listening to it. Do you guys prefer the longer shows, like the 2 hours and more, or would you guys prefer a shorter show, around about an hour, hour and a half? When I started this out, I didn't think it would last more than an hour, hour and a half, but most of my episodes have been pretty long in the scheme of things, so let me know what you think. Do you want the shorter shows, the longer shows, or does it really matter to you guys? Let me know so I can make this the best show for you guys. Alright? Anyways, let's get off my first segment. I still don't have an opening theme, if you will, for this one yet. Still trying to work on it, trying to find something really good, but it's called A Little Head. This episode, we're going to talk about something a little less light, a little more personal to me. Again, for the next little bit, we're going to get into a little more serious matter for Brotherhead. If you like the more wacky and zany and what have you, the pissed off Brotherhead, may want to fast forward a little bit. Looks like to about the 34-minute mark or so. Anyways, kids, here we go. First, a little behind-the-scenes information. Today is November the 25th, 2014. It's a Monday or Tuesday afternoon. Most people I know record podcasts. They spend an hour or two, whatever, that same day. I'm a little different. I'm doing it by myself, so I record a segment here and then wait a day or so and record the next segment depending on time I get. So having said that, this Thursday, the 27th, is the 30th anniversary of my brother's death. And that's the reason for this section of A Little Head this episode, is I'm going to talk about the day he died. This is I'm not doing this just for sympathy or pity or, I'm doing this as a form of therapy for myself. It's been 30 years and it still hurts. I'll get into that in just a minute, but I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing this for me as a form of therapy. So, but yeah, this Thursday, it will be 30 years since he, or not since he died. He died in December, but the house fire that claimed his life was 30 years ago. And coincidentally enough, this year, November the 27th, falls on a Thursday, Thanksgiving Day. Yay for Thanksgiving. Anyways, my story starts almost 30 years ago. I was 14, my brother 11. I lived in Chowchilla, as people that's listening to me knows. My mom worked down the street part-time. I mean, she was working at the school as a special ed teacher's aide, but sometime she would help out down the street with the neighbor that had a rest home. This evening, she was working the rest home, and me and my brother was down there with her. Due to other issues, we couldn't be at the house at the same time as my stepfather if we were there alone. Not going to get into this episode. So we were down with my mom while she was working. There was a handful of old people living there at the time. One of the ladies, I forget her name, not only was she elderly, but she was a little mentally off, I guess. She was always afraid of bugs. She was always thinking there was bugs crawling on her when there wasn't. But she was always freaking out, saying there's bugs crawling on all over. That's part of the important part of the story, because that led us to where we were. The people that owned the rest home, they were running late that night. They'd went out to dinner or something. I don't remember exactly, but they were running late. So my mom had me and my brother lay down, crawl up on the couch or a corner somewhere and lay down and get some rest. I believe we had school the next day. I don't recall now. Pretty sure we did. But so she had to try to get some rest so we'd go to school the next day. And the one old lady kept freaking out, saying, "There's bugs all over me. There's bugs all over me." And so my mom's dealing with that. And this was like 11 o'clock at night. And so, she's exclaiming this. It's disturbed me and my brother. It's still this way. I can almost sleep anywhere. So I was trying to ignore her and get some sleep. My brother, on the other hand, who's I have mentioned this episode, his name was Jerry Lee Todd II. He was, she was bugging him. So, he was telling my mom, "I can't sleep. This old lady's bugging me." And my stepdad had left for work. As I mentioned before, his name's the boy. That's what we call him. He left for work, so my mom's like, "Well, you know what? Your brother Aaron, he's 14. He's a teenager. He's big enough. You guys go down to the house and go to bed, and I'll be down there shortly." Because we was only like we lived 2 houses from the rest home. There was our house, the neighbor, and then the rest home, which many years later my buddy Dean moved into, but that's another story entirely. So anyways, it's 11:30 or so at night. Me and my brother, this must have been on the 26th, me and my brother go down to the house. Again, I'm 14, my brother's 11. We walk down the street to our house, go inside, lock up. And the way our house is laid out, when you walk into the living room, the first door right off the living room is my mom's bedroom, my mom and dad's bedroom. Or you can keep going straight into the kitchen, and off to the right-hand side there is mine and my brother's room. So in theory, my parents' room and our room is right next to each other. But you had to go through the kitchen to get to our room. It's a weird layout. Anyways, I was tired. I didn't want to get up. Backstepping a couple of minutes before we left the house. My mom's, "Aaron, get up, go with your brother. He's too young. He's only 11. He can't go by himself. I want you to go down there, so you can be there in case anything happens. You're a big boy, basically. Go down there and help your be with your brother." "I'm tired, Mom. I don't want to, get up." So, "No, just go down there with your brother. I'll be home shortly." "All right, Mom." So I got up and me and my brother walked home. As we went into the house, again, my mom's bedroom's first, and we had a habit when my stepdad was working, one of us a lot of times would sleep with my mother. My mother's bed. That night, as we went in, I was deadbeat tired. I'm like, I'm just going to crash here. So I went in my mom's room, crawled in her bed. My brother went down to our bedroom and crawled into, I'm assuming, his bed. Anywho, I crawled into bed, went to sleep, didn't really think anything else of it. Sometime later, I'm laying in bed sleeping, and I smell smoke. At first, I thought it was morning, and my mom was fixing something for breakfast and accidentally burned something. So I kind of tried to ignore it. I'm like, you know what? I'm still a little tired. I'm going to get me some more shut-eye until Mom calls me. But the smell was really strong. I didn't hear any banging around or anything in the kitchen, so I kind of sat up and what the heck? And when I sat up, my mom's bedroom was filled with smoke. I could barely see where I was at. Again, so I'm tired, waking up into the smoke. I was a little confused at first. I looked around and I realized I saw the light coming from her bedroom door. The flames basically I could see. So I jumped up and ran out of the bedroom into the front room, and I could see fire, smoke coming from the kitchen area. So, being me, I panicked a little bit, which I shouldn't have done. I called out for my brother a couple of times, and didn't hear any response from him. So instead of doing anything further to help out, I ran out of the house, ran down to where my mom was at, and knocked on the door, pounded on the door. No one answered there. I don't know if I did that first, or I ran across the street. I may have went to where my mom was at first, pounded the door. No one heard me because at the time the main living room where Mom was at was in the back of the house, so she couldn't hear me banging on the door. Ran across the street to the neighbor's house, pounded on the door. They woke up like, what are you bothering me for? It's midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning, whatever. You're bothered. What's going on? I blurted out, my house is on fire. I think my brother's in there. Someone called the fire department. Guy that lived around the corner from us, down by the alley, basically on the other side of the street. He worked for the fire department. Again, I found this out later. He came over and grabbed the water hose. He says he kicked open the front door. I'm not sure if I left it open or not, because I just ran out. I wouldn't be surprised if I did left it open and let the breeze get in there and make the fire bigger. I just ran out without thinking. The reason I mentioned that because later on in the newspaper, there was an article written about the fire, and that was a line there that I left the door open, which helped fan the fire. But then, I forget the name offhand, but the other kid that worked for the volunteer fire department said no, he opened the door up and grabbed the water hose and was trying to put the fire out while they're waiting for the firemen, if you will. Next, the firemen show up. My mom comes running down. My grandfather, he hears the commotion, all this. He comes running out of his house, yelling and cussing at my mother because she left us home alone, and not in the cute Macaulay Culkin way. But it was November the 27th, 1984. They finally found my brother in our bedroom, between where we had bunk beds. I forget now, we would switch on and off who would be in the top, who would be in the bottom, depends on the mood we were in. I think he was in the top at the time, but they said when they, as I was saying, we got bunk beds, and there was a space, maybe a foot and a half between the bed and the wall. We had our bedroom window. We had a little nightstand between the bed and the wall. So there wasn't a big space, there was a little space there. and the firemen said that they found him in between the bed and the wall, covered with blankets. They assumed he was trying to hide from the fire. Maybe he couldn't get out or whatever, but yeah, they said they thought maybe he was trying to hide from the fire, covered himself up to try to protect himself. But they were able to get him out. Later, I learned that, if I'm not mistaken, they said he was dead when they pulled him out, but they were able to revive him, rush him to the hospital. As far as me, I went home, or my grandmother went home. They took me to my grandmother's house, get me out of the way. And I lived there for the next 2 weeks. A little longer than that, but I lived there the next 2 weeks while my mom stayed down at the hospital. My brother was at the burn ward in Fresno Community, maybe, I forget now. Wasn't Fresno, I don't remember, one of the hospitals in Fresno. He was in the burn ward for 2 weeks until December 12th. And my mom was there the entire time, so I stayed with my grandparents for the next 2 weeks. He had third-degree burns over 80% of his body. Like I say, while he was in the hospital, they did several skin grafts trying to help repair some of the damage. Several times they thought they lost him. They were going to lose him. But he'd pull, stubborn little bastard he was, pull through. That went on for 2 weeks. Meanwhile, I'm trying to get my life back together at my grandma's house. All my clothes burned up, everything, except for what I had on. I may have had a couple pair of clothing at my grandmother's house. So I spent a couple of days at home, didn't go to school for a couple of days, actually no, I didn't go to school for the 2 weeks. I went back to school on, I want to say it was a Monday. You know what, you can't mope around here while your brother's in the hospital, you need to go back to school. They're good for you. So I went to school. I went to school 1 or 2 days. I want to say Monday and Tuesday possibly. It may have just been Tuesday. I know I was only in school like a day or two. And then on December the 12th, my mom came in and woke me up. It was like 8, 9 o'clock in the morning. I sat up and didn't dawn on me that my mom hasn't been there in the last 2 weeks and that she's actually waking me up today, or that day. First thing I noticed, it was later in the day than it's supposed to be. I'm like, oh, darn, I gotta go to school, I'm late. So I'm trying to jump up to get ready for school. My mom's like, no, hold on, Aaron, I need to talk to you. And that's when she, told me that my brother had passed away in the middle of the night. They were surprised because I say that he was, the previous 2 weeks they were doing a couple different skin grafts, trying to take skin from good parts of his body and graft it into the bad parts, try to heal him up. Several times they thought they had lost him, or were going to lose him, but he fought back. And at this point, he was in good shape as far as, yes, he still had a lot, 80% burns, or third-degree burns over 80% of his body still. But they thought, he was getting stronger. They thought he was going to do all right. And that's when they lost him. A lot of things around that time is kind of a blur still for me. But, but yeah, so she told me that, my brother had died. I remember my Uncle Oscar and Uncle Alfred came down. I remember crying a lot at the time. I was off school for another week or so because of that. My mom's like, you need to get in school. I know it's hard. You've lost your brother, but you need to go back to school. And I was in high school. I was a freshman in high school at this time. But she can get to school and, get back to some semblance of a normal life as much as we can. So I remember, vaguely going back to school. One thing I do remember from that time period was, again, we'd had the house fire. didn't have any money at the time because, everything burned up. I remember I got a C in PE. Usually I got an A in PE. Not that I'm very physically fit, but as long as you showed up, dressed out, and participated, you got an A. It was an easy A class. I remember for like a month or so, I didn't, with everything going on, my parents and grandparents didn't get a chance to buy me any PE clothes, so I wasn't able to change or, my PE clothes, sweats or whatever for a couple of weeks, maybe a month. And Mr. Sherlock, I always called him Shitlock, he gave me a C that semester because I didn't dress out every day. Even though there was reasons, he didn't give a fuck. He gave me a C. It's one thing that still annoys me to this day, that he was an asshole. Anyways, but so I'm back in school, and another thing, this time period that I remember a buddy of mine, Larry Cook. We were in PE together, we're good friends at the time, and always joking around and busting each other's chops. And during PE one day when we were changing, or I forget now, I think we were done with PE and we were changing back into our regular clothes. Joking around, Larry made a comment that, I bet you actually started the fire jerking off. That's what started the fire. Just being a kid, being a teenager. And I remember him saying that. I just lost, and I grabbed him and threw him against the lockers. I was about to beat the crap out of him for, someone grabbed me and calmed me down, but that's been 30 years ago. He's a little over 2 weeks shy, about 3 weeks now, shy of being dead 30 years. And there's parts of him I remember quite well. Parts of his life I can barely remember at this point. But the one thing I still hold to me that I think it may be part of, I don't want to blame any of my failures on other shit, but I think that's one of the defining moments of my life, one of the two real moments of my past that made me who I am today, I think. If he hadn't died, or if I hadn't been as responsible for his death, and I'll get that in a minute here, I wonder if I would have turned out differently. Who knows? But as far as, saying I'm responsible for what happened to him, maybe no, I didn't start the fire. I couldn't stop the fire. I couldn't have, done anything about that, but I could have at least tried to save him. I mean, I was, some say, well, you're just a kid, you were 14, but no, I was 14. I was almost 15. I was a middle teenager. I was a Royal Ranger, which is a Christian version of the Boy Scouts. I was also a Boy Scout. So, I mean, they teach you, prepare you for this kind of shit in these groups. And I wasn't prepared. I mean, a lot of people don't, unless you were in my house in those years, people don't know this, but like I say, when you come in the house, there's go in the front room, my mom's room, or keep walking straight, go into the kitchen, and then you have my room and my brother's room to the right. In between our two rooms, there was a door. Usually there was shit piled on one side or the other. Either my mom would have her crap piled on one side, or me and my brother have our toys and junk piled on the other side. Sometimes it'd be cleaned up. Sometimes it would be stuff in front, but you still get to it. At this time, I don't remember if it was cleaned up or if there was shit on one side or the other, but again, in the heat of the moment, the fire, the smoke, the flames, the bullshit, I didn't even think about that door. I didn't even try to find someone. I didn't try to go through the bedroom window to get to him. I didn't try, because by the time I noticed the fire and someone was actually able to pull him out, it had to have been a good 10-15 minutes later. Again, I couldn't swear to any times because, it's been 30 years ago, and I'm lucky to know I had for breakfast this morning, let alone did 30 years ago, but I'd be willing to bet there was between 10 to 20 minutes from the time I got out of the house until the time that they were actually able to pull him out of the house, of our room. And that's what I blame myself for, the fact that I even if I would have tried and failed, that'd been something. But not even trying, that's one of my biggest regrets of my life. Actually, that is my biggest regret in my life. Again, if he had died some other way, if I had tried to help him, wasn't able to for whatever reason, because it's too overwhelming, that's one thing. But to panic, and I screamed his name once or twice, and part of me thought maybe he got out. I don't know. Again, it's been 30 years ago. I don't know how much of this was actually me thinking he got out, and how much of me trying to rationalize it. But instead of trying, because I mean, logically, if you think about it logically, he wouldn't have left me. I mean, he was he was my brother. He was a stubborn, hard-headed little pissant, but I mean, he was brave. He was hard-headed. He did things his way, or fuck you. I'm still doing it my way. That's what his biggest problem was, his hard-headedness, his wanting to do things his way. I'm sure if our position had been reversed, or if he'd woke up first and thought about getting out, he would have at least alerted me on the way out. So, I mean, if I would have thought about it, I should have known he was still in there. And again, I should have at least tried something. I don't know. Earlier I said, there came out of the bedroom, I saw the flames licking up on the wall. I don't know exactly. I don't remember exactly how much of the fire I saw, how much of it was just the smoke. I know there was some fire. I'd lived in the room a little bit, so there was some fire in there, but I don't even know if I may have been able to try to get through to him. I don't know. But I could have went through that bedroom door between our rooms, adjoining rooms there. I could have came out and went through the bedroom window. There was ways I could have tried to got to him if I would have hadn't panicked. But instead I panicked, ran down the street screaming like a maniac. And because of that, like I said, brother suffered third-degree burns over 80% of his body. He lived in the hospital in the burn ward for 2 weeks before he died. And also, another thing I forgot when I was relating that part of the story, when he was in the burn ward, my grandparents, my parents, they kept asking, well, do you want to go up and see your brother? You want to go see Jerry Lee? No, I don't want to do it right now. I can't. I don't want to do it right now. Just the thought of him up there tore me up. But one day he was in there for about a week and a half, almost 2 weeks. It was right before he died. I finally said, you know what? In fact, I think it was that weekend before he died. I'm like, you know what? All right, I'll go. So I went there one time and saw him. You couldn't recognize him. Burned all over, wrapped up in gauze, tubes in his mouth and his nose, and IVs, and I didn't recognize him. But I finally, and that's the thing I kind of hated about myself, is that I didn't go up and see him more often. Not that it really matters. I mean, he was unconscious the entire time. They say he didn't really feel any pain. All his nerve endings were burned off, so wasn't any pain. He wasn't conscious he was there, so he doesn't know I didn't go visit him. But I know I was too afraid, too chicken to go up and see him while he was in the hospital. I said until that final weekend when I finally, I guess I can go. Because my parents, my mom, my grandparents kept telling me, I think my uncles probably tell me the same thing, that you need to go see your brother. You don't have to stay long, but you need to go and visit him. And they say supposedly people in comas in that kind of situation can know who's around, can hear you. So you go and give them some words of encouragement. I do remember walking in the burn ward and seeing him laying there all gauzed up, burned up, tubes coming out of him. I took everything in me not to just panic and run out of there, but I visited for a few minutes until I left him. Before I gotta get out of here, and I finally left. And then I say just a couple of days later, he ended up dying. So I am glad that I did get that one time to see him at least, because I would have really felt like shit if I never did see him. And I don't even know if he heard me. Again, he died, so it didn't matter, I guess. But at least I did get there and let him. I love him. I've been rambling on here for a while about this bullshit, so again, yeah, this isn't to get sympathy. It isn't to get people to say, "Oh, brotherhead." That explains why you're so fucked up right now. This is a form of therapy for me. Trying to work out some of my issues, and I don't know if this is going to do any good or not, but I just have to put this out there. At least I've only told a few people who's ever heard any of this story. I know my wife's heard parts of it. Ex-girlfriends here and there that's been with me for a while, they had heard part of it. As messed up as I am, every once in a while I have dreams about him still, or about the fire, or it comes and goes. Sometimes I can go a year at a time, 2 years at a time without any problems, and then other times, weeks or months on end, I think about him. I don't really say a whole lot about it. It's just one of the things rattling around my head. A lot of times, what I'm thinking about, my wife will know, because she knows me pretty damn well. We've been together 9 years now, so she knows me too damn well. So she can tell sometimes when it's bothering me. Sometimes when I'm watching movies or TV shows, it's about fires or house fires. Sometimes I can watch it fine, not a problem. Other times, a little choked up. Sometimes I just can't watch it. There was a show on USA or somewhere about firefighters here several years back I was going to watch, because they were supposed to be a really good show. And I tried watching the first episode, and I'm like, I can't do this. I'm just not in the right mind at this point, so I didn't watch that show. I think it was Rescue Me, I want to say. I said you recently watched that Big Hero 6, and at the beginning, spoilers warning, if you haven't seen Big Hero 6, you may want to close your ears for the next minute or two.
Spoilers!
My mic sounds nice. Check one. Check. And now on to my next segment. Fuck. And his older brother who's in college, and who's trying to get him to go to college with him, because he's like in a real smart college program, real smart college. His brother dies in a fire. The place where they're doing a science exhibit catches on fire, and the place burns down. His brother runs back in to save somebody, and the place explodes, and his brother dies in it. See, when that cartoon character who tried to run and save somebody that he admired, he tried to rescue his idol that he thought was still in there, and I couldn't rush in to save my brother. That's part of me. So anyways, I've already gone over that and beat that with a dead horse. So, as I was saying, like I say, sometimes it bothers me, sometimes it tears me up, sometimes I can get by without thinking about it for long periods of time. It just seems, another reason I'm doing this in this episode, or this, I decided to tell this story finally to anyone that wants to listen, is that it seems as I get older, the whole situation bothers me even more. But anyways, I guess I'm going to the 30-minute mark. So I guess that's enough about me and my issues this episode. But that is, again, as I said, my biggest regret, my biggest failure in life. And that's this episode of A Little Head. Now let's move on to something a little better, a little less depressing. Let's not bring the room down so much, Brotherhead. Before we move on, though, we're going to hear from another friend of the show, another good podcast I love. Sit back and let's lighten the mood up a little bit.
The Ultraverse Network begins now. Over 20 years ago, Malibu Comics debuted the Ultraverse. It may not have lasted long, but the creativity and quality of its titles and creators caught many readers' imaginations when it first appeared and in the years since. This network of fans celebrates the fun and excitement of the Ultraverse and its awesome writers, artists, and characters. Featuring 3 ongoing podcasts covering a variety of topics including Nightman and Solitaire, our blog will feature regular coverage of The Strangers, Sludge, Firearm, Ultraforce, and all your other favorites. Look for Ultraverse Network on iTunes and visit our website at ultraversepodcast.com. We are giving Ultraverse fandom a jumpstart.
And now on to my next segment.
Bitch and moan, bitch and moan, bitch and gripe, gripe and moan, bitch and gripe, bitch and moan, bitch and moan, bitch and gripe.
Brotherheads, bitches, moans, and gripes. This week I'm going to talk about comic books. No, not bitch so much about comics in general, but comparing comic books to soap operas. What? You may be asking yourself. But to begin this, I'm going to say that I think comic books are like kids, and people with a kid mentality like myself. It's their version of a soap opera. You've got, some romance. You've got the weekly or monthly storyline. Again, you do have your standalone stories, but in my opinion, I could be wrong, I like it when things flow from one issue to the next, and it's one large story. I don't know, maybe it's just me, but it's superheroes fighting one another instead of people arguing with one another. That's what I'm starting with. If I'm wrong, let me know. I don't think I am. I'm usually not, but hey, what can I say? Now, a lot of people, women in particular, I hear them complaining that there's not enough female characters or female writers in comic books. Before I go any further with this, let me begin by saying that I do agree to an extent that there's nothing wrong with more female writers, more female characters in the comics, superheroes doing their job as females. I've got no problem with that. Let me start off by saying that before I get people pissed off at me. But again, as I said, to me, comic books are soap operas for the younger generation. And the majority of people that read comic books, from my understanding, are young boys. Or at least that's who most comics are aiming for. Most young boys want to see people they can relate to. They're not going to relate to girls running around spandex. They relate to males, because that's, again, whether it's right or wrong, I'm not judging that. I'm just saying that majority comics, as far as my impression, are by young males, and so they're going to want to read something they look up to. In other words, male superheroes. I think part of that's why there's not a lot of female characters, because they don't tend to take off very well. I mean, you got a few that stick around here and there, but none that really last the long term. I mean, Wonder Woman does all right time and time again. Supergirl's gone through so many different incarnations and changes, but she did quite all right for a while. Batgirl does all right, but again, they're tied in with for the most part, Supergirl, Batman, they're tied in with Superman and Batman. So, I mean, they get kind of a overshoot from that. And then there are young girls. I mean, my daughter, she's 6. She's into comic books. I'm not buying her comics right now, but she's big into superheroes. So, having said all that, why isn't there more female writers or female characters? A lot of it, yes, it is a male-driven profession for the most part. Is that wrong? Is that bad? I can't judge that. I'm not actually in the business. All I'm looking at is from a reader, from an outsider's point of view, if you will. It's through no lack of trying. We all know that. They've tried different series. She-Hulk, that tends to be one they try every once in a while. Currently they've got Ms. Marvel out. I mean, they've tried Storm. Other comics here and there, they've tried female characters, but they don't tend to last very long. Not nearly as well as their male counterparts. And there have been some female writers writing female characters, so we can't say that it's just that guys can't write females. Because even the female comics, or, female superhero comics written by females don't tend to last very long. To me, it says there's not a big need for it. They're not selling. If you can't make, money on it, is there really that big of a need? Again, before I start getting angry letters, or any letters, that'd be nice. But before I start getting pissed off people at me about this, I'm not saying that we shouldn't try. Yes, definitely. But these people that bitch and moan and complain about oh, there's no female superheroes, or, this and that. Maybe there's a reason for it. If it's not selling, if people don't want it, you can't create a market that's not there. It's simple economics. If the market's not there for it, if they can't sell enough to make it viable, they're not going to do it. I don't know where the problem's at. I don't know how to fix that. I don't have a solution. But I do know that part of the problem you're complaining about is not really a problem. And also sometimes, they try to turn old characters into females. I know back in the 90s, they killed off Wildcat and they brought out a young lady dressed in the Wildcat costume. She didn't do well. A lot of times they try to create, other than Supergirl, Batgirl, She-Hulk. Most of the time when you try to replace a male character with a female, and even those, they weren't replacing them. These were add-ons. When you try to change a female or a male character into a female character, it usually doesn't last very long. Currently, Marvel's just changed Thor into a female for that female readership. Is it going to last? It's only been out one issue, I believe. We'll have to wait and see, but I think that's part of the problem. If you can't create an original character, and I know nowadays there's few original characters actually come out, male or female, so it may be a non-issue, but if you can't create an original character, and you have to turn a male character into a female to get readers, that tells you there's a problem. If you can't get writers that can write the females for characters for whatever reason, whether it's a guy or a female, there's a problem somewhere. Again, I don't have the answers. All I'm doing is commenting on what I've seen, my opinions on the matter. But turning an old character, a guy, into a female character, I'm a little more okay with it, like in the Wildcat instance. They killed off Ted Grants, and so I think her name was Yolanda Gomez or something with the title. I'm a little more okay with that instead of the Thor way of saying, okay, presto chango, magic, you're now female. All I can say is that companies need to try to create original female characters. Just womanizing a guy character, all you're doing is trying to cling on to that male readership still, which again is not a bad idea, because if that's who's buying the comics, fuck yeah, sell to them. But I think, and I could be wrong, but I think it's wrong-headed to take a male character, turn her a female character, just say, oh look, we have diversity, we have female characters. Yeah, but you know what? I've got a buck that says within the next year or two, Thor's going to be back to being a guy. He's going to lose the tits, grow his dick back out. He's going to become a guy. Why? In the movies, they got Chris Hemsworth, a good-looking guy, playing Thor. Marvel is so aimed at getting everything lined up in sync, and I'll touch on this later on in other segments, that I don't see him having Chris Hemsworth as Thor in the movies and a female Thor in the comics. I don't see that lasting long. Just like in the comics not too long ago, they killed off, I'm doing in quotes, Peter Parker, and they replaced him with Doc Ock. Long story short, and spoilers for a couple-year-old story, Dr. Octopus was dying, and in his last moments he was able to switch brain waves, put his mind in Peter's body, and Peter Parker, Spider-Man, put his brain into Octavia's body. So Peter Parker died instead, and Octavius lived via Peter Parker's body. And they did that for a couple years. But as I predicted, as I figured, before Amazing Spider-Man 2 came out, they had Peter Parker back in Peter Parker's body. In fact, I think the relaunch of a series with Peter Parker back as Spider-Man came out the same month as Amazing Spider-Man 2. Why? Because they want everything to line up. So again, and in short, basically, I mean, this isn't going to be quite so long. It's not a big bitch, moan, or gripe this time, but I think a lot of these female fans out there need to stop bitching so much that there's not more female characters. Because again, if the characters would sell, you know sure as shit that Marvel or DC or these independents would create more of these female characters. There's a reason they don't. The need's not there, the market's not there. Then fuck, the characters aren't going to be there. Complain all you want. But if people aren't buying the books, it ain't going to happen, sweetheart. Again, I could be wrong. I was wrong before, so I got divorced, but that's another story entirely. But that's my feelings on the matter. And that's this episode's bitches, moans, and gripes. If you disagree with me, please let me know. Send me an email. As always, you can send it to head@headspeaks.com, or you can go to my Facebook or Google Plus page, both located at Headspeaks. Let me know what you think. Am I wrong? Am I full of horseshit? Come on, talk to me, people. Let me know. Alright, now let's go on to another advertisement for another wonderful podcast. Here we go, kids.
Hello, I'm Albie.
And I'm Heather.
And we do the Quantum Leap Podcast. It can be found at quantumleappodcast.com and also on iTunes.
We are starting at the beginning of Quantum Leap and going through all the episodes. This is my first time watching, and Albie has seen them during their original run.
In each podcast, we talk about the overall thoughts of each episode. We do an episode recap if you haven't seen them in a while, just to refresh your memory. And then we do a detailed plot discussion.
And we also have some great interviews.
Scott Bakula, I remember being very, very generous of spirit and very, very kind to his fellow actors. It was my first kiss ever. So I am getting to kiss Scott Bakula on screen. And everybody involved with it was just terrific. And I'm always amazed that people come up to me and remember that episode and can quote things from it that I can't even quote.
So if you're a leaper, it'd be great if you came and joined us. And if you've never heard of Quantum Leap, it's maybe a good time to start watching it because you have a podcast to go along with it.
So please give our podcast a listen, and hopefully you like us and stick around.
Go to quantumleappodcast.com to listen to new episodes.
Now at the Movies with Ed. This episode we're not going to talk so much about a specific movie or TV show, but we're going to do the state of what I call the TV comicverse. All the TV shows based on comic books that are on currently. I'm going to give a brief rundown and my brief thoughts and feelings on them. Let's start with the smallest one. One of the smallest ones, Marvel. Right now the only show they've got on, live action TV show, is Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Overall, it's a good show. The first season started off a little slow. I didn't mind it so much, but a lot of people complained that it was too slow. I liked it. But the last third of the season, it tied into Captain America 2, The Winter Soldier, and it really picked up then. This season, I'm behind a couple episodes, but it started off good. They had the Absorbing Man in the first episode, and then Bobby Moore, a.k.a. Mockingbird, showing up later on. It's a pretty damn good show. Not one of my favorites, but it is pretty damn spectacular. In my opinion, of course. Moving on to Image, the only show they've got currently on is The Walking Dead. It's in its 5th season, I believe. This is one of my favorite shows. The show started off great. It's continuing great. It's got fantastic graphics. The special effects in it's amazing. Fantastic, great storylines. It's an amazing show. I really love it. And then we'll move on to DC's comics, or their shows. First one I want to mention is Constantine. I haven't watched the series yet, just a promo or whatever it was that came out a couple months back. It was online. I really like what I've seen so far, but it seems it may be a little watered down version of the character. I'm not sure. Again, I haven't watched the actual episodes yet, so I could be wrong. To me, this seems like a show that should be more like on HBO or Showtime, so it can be what it should really be. I have heard from one of my coworkers at work that it is pretty good, and I mean they let John smoke, which is a good thing, and it's very. She said it's very hardcore for me on NBC. So again, I've got 5 episodes right now on my DVR to watch. It's just a matter of finding time to sit down and watch it. Hopefully I'll do it soon. So we'll see how that one goes. And for those unfamiliar with the show, Constantine is about a guy named John Constantine. He's a British guy that deals in the magic. He makes deals with demons. A bit of a bastard. I enjoy the comic. I read it every once in a while. Done properly, he's a smoking, foul-mouthed bastard that cares only about himself. Like I say, deals with demons. It's a pretty good book. I'm hoping the show is half as good. Next, we're going to move on to Gotham. I'm really enjoying Gotham. It's not my favorite show so far, but I'll get to that one here in a little bit. But it's still pretty good. Bullock's a little dirtier than I'm used to as far as corruption, but from what I've seen on Wikipedia and online, that's very much in character for the early Bullock before I even got into comics. So I first came across Bullock, I think when he showed up in Vigilante that I reviewed last episode. But overall, I think the actor playing him, Donald Logue or whatever, is doing a pretty good job as Bullock. Ben McKenzie, who's playing playing Gordon, and Lord Taylor, who's playing Penguin, are doing excellent jobs. I think they're doing a fantastic job as both of those characters. Jada Pinkett Smith is very over the top and very comic booky as Fish Mooney. There it is. As Fish Mooney. I thought she's doing a very comic booky and very great job. And also I enjoyed Mr. Zsasz episode before last. He was very good. He also played The Mist over in the Flash TV series. My real problem with the show is that I think some of the cast is older than they should be, such as Harvey Dent, Bullock, Sarah Essen. Just along the mythos, they should be a bit younger, in my opinion. But overall, it's a great show. I'm really enjoying it. It's a different look at the Batman mythos and the Batman characters. I just hope they don't. I don't want them to focus so much on young Bruce Wayne. Again, from what I originally heard, the show was just supposed to be Gordon, basically a crime procedural show based in Gotham, and all the whiny fanboys want Batman. So from what I've heard, that's why they've got more focus on Bruce Wayne than the original intention. And maybe I'm in the minority. A lot of people say, well, it won't do any good without Batman or Bruce Wayne in there. I think it could be a good show still, but it looks like I'm losing that one because they're including a lot of Bruce Wayne and Bruce Wayne becoming Batman, so we'll see. But overall, it is a good show, don't get me wrong. Second to the last show is Arrow. Another show that I'm enjoying. Again, it's not the best one out there, but it's pretty good interpretation of the character. The first season of the show was very CW-y. A lot of people got turned off by it. A lot of teenage angst and what have you in the first season. I think it got better in the second season, and then the third season it's pretty good. I'm enjoying it overall. My only problem with it right now is that I'm not quite sure how I feel about how they're doing Ray Palmer. Ray Palmer, for those that don't know and don't pay attention to me, he is the Atom, one of my favorite superheroes. In the show, he seems very rich and very too aloft for me. Ray Palmer, he's a scientist in the comic. He's a genius almost. He's not quite, I don't know. In the TV show, he's very rich. The first episode, he lands on top of Queen and Consolidated in his helicopter. I made a comment about that, and I'm still bearing with it because, again, I love the Atom, so I'm hoping maybe he'll turn into the Atom. This last episode, they showed the Atom exosuit. Atom was an acronym. The brief view I could see of it looked pretty good. We'll see how it comes out in the actual storyline, though. Finally, the last show I'm going to mention is The Flash. The reason I'm saving this one until now is because, well, you're supposed to save the best for last. And in my opinion, The Flash is the best, I was going to say comic book show, But it's just the best show on TV in my opinion. I'm really enjoying it. I reviewed the pilot episode here a couple of months ago. I'm going to briefly mention, again, since it's my favorite show, I'm going to mention a little about each of the episodes. The second episode had Multiplex, who's a Firestorm villain. I thought they did a great job with Multiplex. I'm not too happy with them killing him off, but again, it's Multiplex, so there's a workaround. Also, they showed Simon Stagg. He is the father-in-law of Rex Mason, aka Metamorpho from the DC Comics. Again, I didn't like the fact that, again, there's going to be maybe some brief spoilers in here, so if you haven't watched The Flash, watch out. Okay, tick-tock, 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 tick-tock. Okay, that's your spoiler warning. There may be some spoilers coming up. In fact, there is spoilers coming up, not maybe, there is. Simon Stagg was killed off by Harrison Wells in the first episode. He showed up in episode 2. At the very end, Harrison Wells stabbed him to keep him from harming Barry. I didn't like the fact that they killed him off. Also, he had an assistant that was killed off named Java. In the comics, Java's more Neanderthal. There you go. Wasn't that hard, Aaron? Neanderthal. He wasn't quite so Neanderthalish in the show. I don't know. I mean, again, they were just a brief one-episode appearance, so I'm not going to get too worked up on it. Third episode, the main villain was the Mist. Again, not a big fan of the Mist. Not very familiar with him. When I saw him, he looks familiar. Got looking into it, and he did show up in a couple issues of Starman that I read years ago. But he's not a big character I've seen a lot about. So overall, though, it was still a good episode. Very well done. The fourth episode, they introduced Captain Cold, one of the Flash's biggest villains, often leader of the Rogues Gallery. I really enjoyed that. It was fantastic. I giggled like a little schoolgirl. I do that a lot during the show. I also like how they were able to incorporate his parka and his glasses, like they do in the comic. It looked a little different, but realistic, but it was still his trademark parka and goggles he wears, so it's fantastic. And also like the mention of Heatwave at the very end. And then we move on to episode 5, probably one of the best, if not the best, episodes of the season so far. Oh, where do we start this one? They had Flash running up the side of a building, the Flash running on top of water. Awesome Flash stunts you see in the comics, live action. That was just fantastic, great, awesome. I just can't say enough about it. Plastique, I loved her. Again, they killed her off. Another Firestorm villain. They killed her off, but at this point, she's got the exploding powers where she can make things explode. So I have seen exploding heroes reform themselves, come back. So again, she's bringable backable, if you willable. You know what I'm saying? They could bring Plastique back, and I'm very much hoping so. General Elling, he was great. I love Clancy Brown. He's a great actor. I love seeing him in shows. So he was fantastic as General Wade Elling, or Ealing, however. The Grodd appearance was fantastic. I loved it. I can't wait for him to actually show up in modern day, because it was just a flashback of him. I can't wait to see how because I don't know if you've watched that episode, if you caught that they were, when Wells was talking to Elling, or Ealing, he had mentioned something about mind control. In the comics, Grodd has mind manipulation, mind control, so I can definitely see the tie-in there. It's fantastic. And finally, for this episode of The Flash, what the hell is up with Wells? Is he a good guy? Is he a bad guy? I've heard there's all sorts of theories out there on the internet. Some say he could be Hunter Solomon, Zoom, which was a type of Reverse Flash that fought Wally, I believe it was. I've seen guesses that he's Metron from the New Gods, who's always in a chair. He could be the Reverse Flash. I've seen rumors of possibly Rip Hunter, a guy that travels through time. They call him the Time Master. What is going on with this guy? I can't wait to find out. That's part of the excitement is, Is he good? Is he bad? Is he bad good? Doing good stuff for a bad reason, doing bad stuff for a good reason. Harrison Wells is the enigma of this show. And I'm not talking about the Riddler. See, I'd been a whole lot funnier if I hadn't stumbled over the word enigma. But anyways, what's going on with Wells? If you guys have any guesses, feel free to throw them on my Facebook or on my blog. And finally, on episode 6, the Reverse Flash showing up and threatening Joe West. Iris giving the Flash his actual name on her blog. It's a fantastic episode, great. Heard a lot of people guess that this is proof that Wells is the Reverse Flash, because the Reverse Flash showed up at Joe's house as Joe's investigating the Reverse Flash. I see it a different way. He had just scratched Wells' name off his list, is no longer a possible suspect. And then the Reverse Flash showed up. I think if it is Wells, he's a bit of an idiot, because, to me anyways, you just scratch him off and all of a sudden the Reverse Flash shows up. That maybe, like a lot of people guess, maybe it is Wells trying to scare him off. But if he'd already marked him off, why bother scaring him off the track? That's what I'm thinking. So I'm taking it maybe this isn't Wells. And maybe it's either Eddie Thawne, as a lot of people have guessed, or maybe Eddie's son from the future. We'll have to wait and see. But overall, The Flash is my favorite comic book / just regular TV show on TV for, I don't know, the last several seasons at least. The Flash is fantastic. If you haven't watched it yet, why the hell not? Go out and watch it. My wife's cousin, Scott, he's a comic book fan. He says he thinks they're on either Netflix or on one of these streaming sites. If not, there are places on the internet you can get them. Go watch The Flash. It's a great show. I can't speak highly enough of it. Go. Stop. Okay, pause the podcast. Go listen to 6-7 episodes. Listen. Try that again. Watch 6-7 episodes of The Flash. In case I haven't mentioned it recently, there is a Flash podcast. Andy B. and a couple other guys talks about each episode of The Flash. If you haven't listened to that podcast, check it out. It's pretty good. But yeah. But anyways, that's the state of the current comic book verse. TV verse, I'm not tackling the cartoons because, honestly, there's not a lot of good ones on right now. Star Wars Rebels not bad. I'm still trying to get over the artwork. I don't care for Hulk and Agents of Smash. I don't care for the Red Hulk. I just don't. It's too kiddie-fied for me, that show is. Avengers Assemble's not a bad show. And Ultimate Spider-Man's okay. It's borderline. I think it's a little too kiddie-fied for me, but anyways, that's the state of the comic verse, TV verse for now. Go ahead before my next segment come on. Try that again. Before my next segment comes on, I've got another great ad for you to listen to. So sit back, take off your shoes, and listen to this one, kids.
Hey, Jeff.
Hey, Mike.
Man, it sure is great to be back from crisis to crisis after all this time. It's been a busy year for both of us.
For very different reasons.
But now we're ready to cover the post-Death and Return Superman stories.
Yeah, and we're about to start the books that came out in 1994, which means that we have so much to look forward to, like Bizarro's World.
The Battle for and Fall of Metropolis.
Superman Doomsday, Hunter, Prey.
Worlds Collide.
Well, you're looking forward to that one.
Oh, bite me.
0 Hour.
0 Month.
And right there at the end, we have Dead Again.
And don't forget the Elseworlds annuals as well.
Well, most of them anyway.
Yeah, some of those really did suck, don't they?
But From Crisis to Crisis is back. New episodes will drop on Thursday, just like before.
You can find the show at the Superman homepage, www.supermanhomepage.com, as well as at the Superman Podcast Network, which is at www.supermanpodcastnetwork.com.
And we also have a Facebook page that you can like by going to www.facebook.com/FromCrisisToCrisis, a Superman Podcast.com. Is it .com on there? No, it's not. No .com. Forget that.
So From Crisis to Crisis is back, folks, and better than ever.
Well, I'm better than ever. You need some work.
No, shut up.
No, you 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 shut up.
From Crisis to Crisis, a Superman podcast, covering the post-crisis adventures of Superman, one half month at a time. Every Thursday at www.supermanhomepage.com and www.fortressofbaileytude.com.
Butterfly in the sky, I can go twice as high. Take a look, it's in a book, a reading rainbow.
Who can read on the run and have lots of fun? Speed reader, speed reader. Who can do a handstand and read everything on the newsstand? Speed reader, speed reader. Speed reader. Who can run forward and back and read everything in the stack? Speed reader, speed reader, speed reader, speed reader. And here he comes, Kenobi!
Head and Head's Bookshelf.
This episode of Head's Bookshelf, I'm going to talk about because in English for the English speakers out there, I'm going to talk about the book called Kenobi by John Jackson Miller. It's part of the Star Wars universe, the expanded universe. Well, it's the old expanded universe. It's no longer continuity, but hey, screw it. I'm enjoying them for the most part. But that's another story entirely. We are going to talk about Kenobi. This story is set right after the events of Star Wars, The Revenge of the Sith, which was episode 3 for all the kiddies out there. Book starts off with Obi-Wan Kenobi delivering the young infant Luke Skywalker to his step-uncle, Owen Lars, on Tatooine. Now Obi-Wan has to settle to life on Tatooine and learn to let go of his old life as Obi-Wan Kenobi and learn to become the old hermit Ben Kenobi. But life or the Force won't let Obi-Wan go so gently into the sweet night. Trying to settle into his new home, he meets the Caldwell family, where he saves young Kelly Caldwell from a runaway animal headed to a field of sarlacc. He meets Kelly's mom, Annaline Caldwell, a.k.a. Annie. Yes, her nickname is Annie, and Obi-Wan does mention, that he prefers to call her Annaline because, he knew Annie once before, and that didn't end well. Anyways, he then begins going to Annaline's store on a semi-regular basis. The store is called the Danner's Claim. It's a store that Annaline's dead husband used to own, and then she inherited when he died. Unfortunately for wannabe hermit Ben, Miss Annaline takes a little bit of a liking to him and starts to grow attached to him, or attracted to him. While going to the claim, Ben learns that the settlers have set up a militia to fight against the Tusken Raiders, a.k.a. the Sand People. We also are introduced to Danner's best friend, whose name is Oren Galt, who's in charge of the militia. And there's also some romantic, somewhat intentions between him and Annaline. Meanwhile, Ben finds he's able to speak to the leader of the clan of Tuskens called Ayark. Is that how I pronounce it? And Ayark is able to speak with Ben. She knows some basic, or whatever language it is, in the Star Wars universe. Before long, Ben finds himself between Annie, Oren, and the Tuskens. What happens next? Well, find the book Kenobi and read it for yourself. It's a really great book. My likes on it, we find out how Obi-Wan became Ben for the most part. We also find out a little bit behind the scenes on the lives of the Tuskens and their motivations, as far as motivations of the Sand People go. And I think it also nicely sets Ben up on Tatooine. It's a great, I don't want to say introduction, but it's a great way to, give us a little backstory on old crazy Ben from the original Star Wars, and kind of shows how he became Obi-Wan Kenobi Jedi Knight to the old Hermit Ben. It's very nice. I really enjoyed it. As far as dislikes, honestly, I didn't find much to dislike in this book. I mean, as far as the Star Wars Expanded Universe, and I'll touch that on a later podcast, some of the books are really good, some are and some are, oh my god, that was horrible. This book falls more on the, that was a pretty damn good book. So anyways, I definitely recommend Kenobi by John Jackson Miller. It's part of the Star Wars Expanded Universe. It's no longer in continuity. That doesn't bother me. If you have a brain in your head, it won't bother you either. So yeah, if you like good stories, you like Star Wars, go find Kenobi by John Jackson Miller. Pick it up and read it. Anywho, but now you know today what's on Head's bookshelf. Now sit back for another wonderful ad for another wonderful podcast I listen to.
It started as an idea, a flicker. Now with a simple voice email to the Superman in the Bronze Age podcast, that flicker has become a flame.
Now, Russell, you're ready to start a podcast.
Yep, you're ready to go.
Yes, start it, and then we can email you.
Whoa. And Russell has been, the most consistent emailer. I think it's time that he does start a show.
DC Comics Presents. After Dave's done, and you're not covering every issue, so he could do all of them.
I would highly recommend that, actually.
That would be awesome. So there you go, Russell. Go for it. I can't wait to hear his reaction to this.
Well, boys, here's your response. The DC Comics Presents show, hosted by me, Russell Bragg. On each episode, I will cover one issue of DC Comics Presents, in publishing order, until I reach the end of the series. I will also be covering all 4 annuals. Plus, I will be doing a character spotlight on each of Superman's guest stars, and we'll be going to the spinner rack to see what other comic books were available. Join me each episode of the DC Comics Presents show.
Please go to the show's website at www.dccpshow.com for more information. That's DCCPSHOW.
And now, on my next segment, which is...
Faster than a speeding bullet.
In the great hall of the Justice League,
Spider-Man and his amazing friends.
the Justice League of America versus the Legion of Doom. This is
What's in Head's Long Box?
Dedicated to truth, justice, and peace for all mankind. The world's greatest super friends.
In this episode of What's in Head's Long Box, I'm going to talk about Vigilante number 50. Last episode I covered the first issue and then also the New Teen Titans annual when Adrian Chase first appeared as Vigilante. Now I'm going to cover the last issue of the series. Before I get started, spoiler warnings for a 27-year-old story. If you don't want major spoilers for the Vigilante storyline, you may want to skip this section. There's your warning, kids. Now, moving on to Vigilante number 50. We had 27 pages of story for a low price of $1.50. Back in the day, $1.50 was a little high, but it was a couple extra pages, and it was the final issue, so it wasn't too bad, actually. I say back in the day, when was this, Brotherhead? You may be asking. The cover date was February of 1988, the same year I graduated high school. But, contraire, mon frere, if you actually wanted to buy it on the stand, you would have to go back to October the 13th of 1987. The writer of this bad boy was Paul Kupperberg. The penciler Steve Irwin. The inker was Jack Torrance. letterer John Costanza, the colorist Liz Berub, and the cover was by Ken Stacy. The editor, Mike Gold. And before we actually get to the issue 50, to give you a little heads up of what's occurred before, because some of this stuff refers back to it. Through the first 30 some odd issues or so, Adrian Chase, aka the Vigilante, tried not to kill his enemies, unlike Frank Castle, aka the Punisher over at Marvel. Though in issue 37, he allowed a police officer to die as a result of his actions. After this issue, he became a little more violent. He didn't quite care so much about how he got things done and who got in his way. Eventually, Adrian Chase got tired of it and gave up being the Vigilante. He returned to being plain old Judge Adrian Chase. But seeing how this was all before issue 50, you might be able to guess that other people picked up the Vigilante ID. The first was his fellow judge, Alan Wells, who was even more violent than Chase. Wells would go as far as killing petty thieves, even. Adrian ended up tracking him down and killing him before realizing that it was his friend. He attempted to cover up Wells being the new Vigilante, which got scrutiny from Harry Stein. Harry Stein will be showing up eventually in my Task Force X podcast, so check out that here in a couple of months to hear more about Harry Stein. The second Vigilante, well, technically I guess he's the third Vigilante. His name was Dave Winston, who is Adrian Chase's bailiff. He was the opposite of Wells, and he refused to kill. He ended up being killed by the Peacemaker, a Charlton hero that DC Comics acquired, when Dave was trying to stop a hijacking of a plane that Chase happened to be on. After this, Chase became the Vigilante once more, figuring the only way to protect his loved ones from becoming the Vigilante was to take on the role himself once again. Seeking revenge on the Peacemaker, Adrian Chase tracked him down and was fighting him, but ended up getting beat down by him instead. It was unmasked on live TV. Unrevealing? Try that again. Peacemaker beat Adrian Chase, the Vigilante, down and unmasked him on live TV, revealing his secret ID to the world, ending Adrian's life, in quotes, causing him to retreat further into the Vigilante persona. Through the rest of the series, Adrian became more conflicted with his actions and his life. He slowly started becoming mentally unstable. He had bouts of enraged violence, paranoia, and terrible remorse for his actions. Near the end, he even resorted to murdering innocent police officers who got in his way. Which all brings us up to issue 50 of The Vigilante. The cover shows Adrian standing in front of a mirror with his back to us and just a pair of blue jeans, no shirt on, with his handgun out pointed at the mirror. The reflection in the mirror, we see the Vigilante pointing his gun back. The title says, "Is this the end of Vigilante?" And now for a synopsis of the story. Adrian Chase is haunted by his own past. After a fight with After a fight with Black Thorn, who is his girlfriend and fellow Vigilante, he leaves his apartment and begins walking the streets. At a theater, he almost kills 3 punks that are causing a disturbance. Blackthorn and Harry Stein, as I said later, I think Blackthorn also shows up in my Task Force X podcast later down the line. But her and Harry Stein, who I mentioned previously, get together to talk about Chase's erratic behavior. Chase then dons his costume and attacks various street criminals. He's very maniacal in his approach. Arthur Hall, chief of police, and the police are on his trail, and they're trying to set up a trap for him. They stage a little shootout, which draws the Vigilante to the area. Adrian ends up shooting several cops, including Hall. He then flees the scene. Adrian returns to his apartment. He realizes that this entire time he's been trying to kill himself, but his opponents aren't good enough to complete the task. He then takes his own gun and holds it to his mouth. Later on, Blackthorn returns to the apartment, Adrian's apartment, where she finds Adrian's corpse, as he's taken his own life. We end the book with Adrian's funeral, attended by Blackthorn, Harry Stein, Harvey Bullock, and others. Yes, Harvey Bullock, if you're familiar with Gotham, that Harvey Bullock. And we close out with a close-up of Adrian Chase's tombstone. The end. Now, for my thoughts on the issue, let's start with the beginning, the cover. It looks a little rough, but having said that, it's very nice. It's very simple. In just the one cover shot, it shows you the existential crisis that Adrian's going through. Is he Adrian? Is he the vigilante? How can he stop the vigilante if he is the vigilante? Again, we've got the suggested for mature readers warning on this, as this was very much a mature reader's book. But it's a great cover. Very minimalistic, but very nice. And then we move on to the story itself. Again, it's got good artwork in the story. We start with Adrian looking at a newspaper coming in. Some kid asks if he's alright, calling him Mr. Baker. And through the thought bubbles here, it's a lot of thought panels where he kind of recaps what's going on, that, he's currently called Dean Baker. It's just his alias he's using right now. The little boy reminds him of his own son, Adam. And we see, he's got some flashbacks of his kid. When we see some thunder and lightning outside. His kid's kind of scared in the blanket. We see Chase cuddling him or holding him, trying to comfort him. And we also have a little inset showing face currently, sweat pouring down his face, just tore up by the memory of his son. Then he thinks about his daughter, Drew, who was tougher than her brother, a little older, but she wasn't afraid of anything. Again, a little scene of it, it looks like a birthday party, and other shots of his kids. Then he's confronted by Black Thorn, who throughout the later part of the series became his girlfriend and fellow vigilante crime fighter, if you will. And we see that apparently in the previous issue or so, he beat the living crap out of her because she's got a black eye. Blackthorn, she's an okay character. She's got black hair that's usually sticking up big, puffy, and wild. She's in a house robe, and like I say, her eye, you can tell it's black, and where apparently he beat her down. They have a little arguments. Adrian, letting you know how he's conflicted about how he should have stayed and helped this one guy, but he left him to die, even though the guy he left to die was a scumbag. She kind of comforts him a little bit. He's telling her, he's telling her that she should leave, He says, like the scene right here, commenting how he's, kind of sorry about what he's been doing, and she's, telling him, yourself, what, you're a bleeding heart liberal? You go around killing people, and you're the one yourself has been saying, these people deserve to die. And Adrian's like, well, then I was wrong. Lord, we roam these streets in these damn costumes, playing God with people's lives. Are we insane? So a little bit of, again, he's having an emotional, existential crisis at the moment of who he is and what he should be doing. He's basically trying to end it with her, but she's like, I'm sticking with you. He's not going anywhere without her. And he smacks her with his hand, knocks her down, and leaves. Then we see Captain Hall out on the streets. It's on the title page. It shows Vigilante, created by Marv Wolfman and George Perez. As I said, we see Captain Hall on the street chasing a guy in a black costume, thinking he may be the Vigilante. A lot of people think Vigilante's dead right now, but Hall's not quite so sure. They chase the guy through an apartment, and Hall finally catches up with him on the outside of the fence. They arrest him. And then we cut to a slasher movie. It looks like Jason Voorhees. He's got the hockey mask on. He's got a chainsaw cutting some woman up. We see it's Adrian in a movie theater. Behind him, some kids are being rowdy, throwing stuff around. And we get some flashbacks about his wedding day, about his wife Doris. We see the explosion that killed his family, almost killed him. And basically, here in the final issue, we get a little flashback and a little reference back to that Teen Titans issue where his family died. And basically, throughout the next couple pages, just him reliving the series, talking about people that died or people that, was trying to help him. If you remember from last episode, his buddy JJ, the young man that was his tech guy, apparently he died at some point. He damns himself because, instead of stopping crime, he became a killer. Talks about a woman that loved him named Marcia King. And apparently she left him because she makes a comment that at least she's still alive. And every once in a while, a red thought bubble pops up the word dead. Every once in a while, just showing that this all was weighing on his mind heavily. The punks that are throwing things around, they're harassing an older man sitting in his seat. They accidentally hit Adrian in the back head with a piece of candy. And he gets up and starts yelling at him to shut up. And they're telling him, again, this, as I said previously, this is not a kid's podcast, so there may be some language coming up right here. There is going to be some language. The kids are like, hey, yeah, mama. The guy says, concern this, faggot, flipping him off. And another kid showing him his ass saying, hey, while you're at it, man, kiss this. And we see a close-up of Adrian's eyes. And next thing we know, behind him on the screen, we see, looks like blood and someone's partial face, and he's leaping at the kids like an animalistic scream going, "Arrgh!" And we see him leaping over the seats, thumping the kids, just kicking them around, beating them down. As he's beating the crap out of the kids, in fact, we see one of them, he's punching, we see blood flying out of his mouth or nose or something. The police show up and they drag him off the kids. He hits the cops and runs out of there. And the entire time, we've got his thought bubbles, him narrating what's going on, that, he's gone insane, he's not sure what's happening to him, he's become crazed and out of control. Again, I've said it before and I'll say it again, I do enjoy the artwork in here. You can tell what's going on, it's very nice. I mean, I can't really say much more than that. I'm not an art major or anything, so I don't have any scientific or any artistic words for it, just that I know what I like, and I like this art. It's very nice. It's not a lot of artists, especially nowadays that I've seen, they get real dark with their drawings, or they're too vague, too I can't find quite the proper words to describe it. Just too unfinished, too sometimes cartoony. I don't know. But however you want to describe it, I just don't care for a lot of it. Meanwhile, this artwork, it's very good. It tells you the story. But then like I said in the synopsis, we see Thorne talking with Harry Stein, and basically she's given Harry a little rundown on what's happened since the last time that Stein had seen the Vigilante. She tells him how, he used to be a big bad tough guy basically, and then this morning when she left, he was on the verge of tears. She says, big macho Vigilante sobbing because he made a mistake, for Christ's sake. Something's wrong with him. We've got to find Adrian before he does. God, I don't know what he might do. And Harry says they've already got agents out looking for him. Then we cut over to Lexington Avenue on 49th Street, where we see Captain Hall with his team of men preparing. They're still looking for Adrian, trying to track him down. Then we cut again to seeing Vigilante taking out a handful of thugs. They're shooting at him. He's dodging, and he's shooting them back. And again, he's flashing back, remembering Wells and Dave Winston in their time as a Vigilante, feeling bad that both of them took up his madness and became the Vigilante. And basically the next couple pages, again, If you haven't read the last 30 or the last 20 or 30 issues or so, probably, this gives you a brief recap of what happened to him. Alan lost faith in the system of justice. That led to his mental breakdown, coinciding with his abandonment of the vigilante identity. He tells us that it was a stupid mistake on his part that allowed his friend to discover his identity. And he tells how he had, as I said in the synopsis, I said this in the what happened previously section of the story. He hunted his buddy down and shot him after, I guess, he killed a villain called the Executioner. As we end this flashback, we see the cops coming up. Adrian's just fled the scene, and we saw the gang members, I believe they were, he was shooting with earlier. They're all laying dead in pools of blood. Very nice. The scene, when the cops pull up, you can tell it's a night scene. They're bathed, the red lights of the flashing globes from the police car. This is on page 14 of the story. It's very nice, this last section. I'm just admiring the artwork on this. It's very nice. I really like it. The next page, he goes back in to his flashback, flashing back to how his bailiff basically took up the identity, and how how the Peacemaker, another vigilante, ended up killing that vigilante. And he's saying, once again, I was witness to a vigilante's death, and it was then I knew the vigilante would be with me to the end. I went mad, yes, but that didn't make my revelation any less true. Whenever I tried to abandon vigilante, someone had to die. And then someone shoots a window out right next to the vigilante. He peeks in the window, and we see three, I'm assuming these are mob guys. One of the guys sitting in the chair with the smoking gun said he saw some punk fooling around the fire escape. Adrian jumps in and just looks. I thought it was a mob, but it looks like it's a drug house. There's people sitting around smoking pipes of some sort. He says it's a modern-day opium den. He starts shooting, killing everybody in sight. He killed everyone with guns. He killed the junkies. Everyone. Again, as he says, everyone who got near him has to die. The police come busting in and find the place, it's trashed. And one of the cops says, "You really disappointed you didn't run to the guy who did this?" As they're looking at the massacre, the carnage surrounding him. We see some, again, if we had some 80s music playing, we see montage of the vigilante taking on different criminals, either shooting them, beating them up. Meanwhile, as Captain Hall says, the last report was about a dozen blocks from where they're at. He's coming right towards them. The next thing we see is we don't know this at this point, really. What we do, we see a shootout going on, and we see cops hiding, watching the shootout going on. When suddenly Vigilante jumps out from behind, looks like he crawls up a wharf or something, and he shoots. It looks like maybe, to me, it looks like maybe Bullock. I don't think that's Bullock. It's just some other undercover cop disguised as a scumbag. The cops all start shooting at the Vigilante. Vigilante shoots back, and Vigilante realizes it was a setup. And he realizes that all he's been shooting right now are cops. And as he says here, how many had I killed? I didn't know who they were. No, don't think. Just get away from here. So he runs from the cops. As he's running away, Captain Hall shows up and tells him, stop. He's the police. And Vigilante, without thinking, just shoots Captain Hall right in the chest, lower upper abdomen, somewhere in there. And he sees what happened, that he shot his one-time, I guess we can say, friend. I don't know how good of friends they were, but they knew each other. Vigilante pulls his mask off as Captain Hall lays there bleeding, blood all over his shirt. He's laying in a pool of blood. And as he lays there dying, he's basically accusing Adrian of, not giving a damn about anybody. He says, the wrong man's lying here dying. If I could kill you with my bare hands. Basically calling him a wild animal. Adrian's trying to help him. He says, no, you've done enough. Get out of here. Let me die in peace. Again, flashing back to the faces of his wife, kids, JJ, Alan and Dave, the previous vigilantes. And we see a heart-wrenching scene of Adrian's face, just tears running down his face. The police come out, and they find Captain Hall laying there bleeding. They call for an ambulance. Again, very nice scene of the Punisher taking off in the background there, jumping over some crates. They're trying to find the light switch. They're trying to get help to Captain Hall. Again, this is page 22 of the comic. If you have it or if you get a hold of it, read it. It's a very good scene. We're switching back and forth between Vigilante putting his mask back on, the cop coming up, finding Hall's body. I've said it before and I keep saying it. It's really great artwork. I just love it. I just keep going on and on about it. Then we cut to Adrian's house where we see he realizing that he says as soon as he shot Arthur Hall, no one else could do this for me. It was my job. I was supposed to rid the streets of killers and madmen, wasn't I? So was I hesitating? We see him putting one bullet in the gun. He's looking as he crumples up his mask in his hand as we see him walk into the bathroom. So they're looking in the mirror. Again, very nice drawing. We cut from him in the bathroom, putting his mask on the sink, to Harry Stein dropping Blackthorn off. And then we're cutting back and forth between Adrian shutting the bathroom door, Thorn coming in, Adrian on the toilet holding the gun, Thorn waiting for the elevator, Adrian pinned the gun up next to his head, under his chin. That's what it's called. He's putting the gun under his chin. Blackthorn in the elevator on the way up. We see a close-up of him pulling the trigger. Just an extreme close-up of his finger on the trigger. You see his index finger pulling down. Then we show just his mask laying there on the sink. Again, we see another close-up shot of him still pulling the trigger, the hammer cocking back to Thor in the elevator. Next thing, we just see his mask, close-up of his mask laying on the sink with half a dozen blood splatters around it. And then we see Thorn coming to his apartment looking for him, seeing his clothes on the floor, his tunic, his shirt, whatever you want to call it. She goes in the bathroom looking for him, and we see her face like, Adrian! And then we don't see her with his body, but we see again the mask on the sink, and we see the mirror, and it's all got blood splattered all over it, and we hear her, oh my god, Adrian, sob, no. So I like how they're not showing us her grief in too much detail here, but you can still tell from the way the panel's laid out that she's, very upset that Adrian's killed himself. And then as mentioned previously, we're back at the funeral. We see Blackthorn, Harry Stein, Bullock, a couple other people. Bullock's crying, blaming on the flowers, saying it's playing heck with his hay fever, or playing hell with his hay fever. Stein and Blackthorn talking. Apparently, they cremated him, as he has no other family. Cremation's cheaper than burying somebody. He gave Blackthorn the urn. They're standing around he's smoking while they're talking. And she has a nice little soliloquy here about how she's talking to Adrian. I'm going to read this because I like this last... her little soliloquy here. She asked Harry to be alone for a minute, and she's like, I guess that's it, baby. I know I wasn't always honest with you, that I messed with your head, but that was before. Before I realized how desperately I love you. I'll never go away, Adrian. You'll always be here. in my heart. Goodbye, Adrian Chase. And as I said, we end up on his tombstone, Adrian Allen Chase, September 15th, 1951 to October the 6th, 1987. And that's the end of not only this page, this issue, The Vigilante, both the character and the series. As I said previously, I think it was last episode, will be other Vigilantes later on, but none that I connect with like this. I really enjoyed this run. A friend of mine, I forget who it was now, hooked me into it. I read some of his, decided to go out and buy the whole series myself because it was a great series. Then we have the letters page, which was called You, the Jury. And they're telling us that, the conclusion of this issue was preordained ever since Adrian threw the police off the fire escape in Vigilante 37. And they realize, it's going to be a multi-part story and that it's going to end at some point. And in the little writers or editor section there, they tell us how suicide's not always a solution. And the very last sentence is, Adrian Chase has paid the price of his actions as he understood it. And then we got the letters. The next issue box says there's more to the story of Vigilante, and you'll be seeing it in the pages of DC books in coming months. The story of Harry Stein and Blackthorn and their co-hosts will continue an entirely new series by Paul Kupperberg and Steve Irwin called Checkmate. And in case you haven't heard, Checkmate is going to show up in my Task Force X podcast later on down the line when it shows up continuity-wise. And they also there's going to be a preview of it in Action Comics in 2 months, followed by the first issue the following month. Again, I will review that Action Comics they're referring to. I think it was $5.99 if I'm not mistaken. But that's the end of the issue. End of the series, as I said. It was a great book. I thoroughly enjoyed it. If you get a chance to find it, definitely check it out. Vigilante was an great run. Fantastic artwork. Great writing. May have been some moments here and there when it wasn't super fantastic, but overall, I thoroughly enjoyed this book. I don't know much else to say about it other than go check it out. It was a great book. Vigilante from DC Comics. As a follow-up to the Vigilante, just to let you know that after this storyline, Adrian does make another appearance in a series called Day of Judgment. As one of the dead heroes in Purgatory, he and the others run interference, battling the Guardians of the Realm, so other living heroes can escape with the soul of Hal Jordan. The crisis concluded with Hal Jordan assuming the mantle of the Spectre. Jim Corrigan appeared briefly on Earth, who's the Spectre, stating that the efforts of Chase and other heroes in Purgatory have earned them an appeal in the Shining City. Which basically after, because that was 87, Day of Judgment was 2000, I believe. So it was over 10 years that they finally gave a conclusion to Adrian's story, if you will. And lastly, I don't believe any of these issues, other than the Teen Titans appearance, showed up anywhere else. So again, to get these, either check your local comic book shop or check online at a comic place for the individual issues. But if you can get them, I definitely recommend it. But enough going on about the Vigilante and Adrian Chase. Let's go in here for another advertisement. This one a little closer to home for Brotherhead. And we'll move on to another segment. Thanks, guys. A secret governmental organization operating behind the scenes. Task Force X. The Suicide Squad, ran by Amanda Waller. Checkmate, ran by Harry Stein. One group made up of villains, the other by the best agents our country has. Both doing jobs that need to be done so you can sleep at night. These are the tales of DC Comics, Suicide Squad, and Checkmate. Monthly from Head Speaks. Available on iTunes and at headspeaks.com under Task Force X. Task Force X. Check it out. That's right, Task Force X. If you haven't listened to it yet, go listen to it. Though later on, like I say, a couple months down the road, I will start reviewing the Checkmate books, which Blackthorne and Harry Stein show up. I believe Bullock shows up in there also for a while. Watch for it. But enough about that. Let's go ahead and move on to my next segment, which is...
Yo, Joe! We'll fight for freedom wherever there's trouble. G.I. Joe is there. G.I. Joe, American hero.
And the masters of the universe.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Heroes in a half shell. Turtle power. Who you gonna call? Thundercats. Transformers. More than meets the eye. Autobots wage their battle to destroy the evil forces of the Decepticons.
Whatever the challenge, they are ready. The Centurions
Are the visionaries.
I am Dungeon Master, your guide in the realm of Dungeons and Dragons.
And now Geekin' with Head.
Now I know. And knowing is half the battle.
G.I. Joe!
In this episode of Geekin' with Head, we're going to talk about the current comic book marketplace. Now, I called it the current comic book marketplace. I don't want people writing in pissed off, but when I'm going to talk about the New 52 and Marvel now. DC and Marvel. I know there's all these independents, there's Image, IDW, and all these others. I'm not focusing on them so much, I'm focusing on the big two. And let's go ahead and start today with Marvel and their current regime called Marvel Now. Currently the books I'm reading and enjoying from Marvel is Spider-Man and the Spider-Man stories, Nova, Guardians of the Galaxy, The Incredible Hulk, actually I think it's just called Hulk right now, the all-new X-Men, Ultimate Spider-Man, and a few other titles. Now that I've said that, I'm reading some of the Avengers stuff, but I'm not a big fan of the current writing and or the art on the Avengers and most of the X titles. And I also don't read anything with Nick Fury Jr. in it, just on principle, if I can help it anyways. My main thing with Nick Fury Jr., the reason I don't buy into it is, well, start from the beginning of this. The Marvel Cinematic Universe is mostly based on the Ultimate books. But Marvel and their warped logic, they're trying to align the current Marvel Universe, the comics, with the Marvel Cinematic Universe. In fact, they went as far as having a 6-issue series called Battle Scars, creating a black Nick Fury, who is the regular Nick Fury's illegitimate son. For those unfamiliar, in the regular Marvel Universe, Nick Fury's a white guy. 15-20 years ago, when they created the Ultimate Universe, basically the Ultimate Universe was a way for them to retell their stories to a new audience with a new spin on things. And one of the changes they made was when they created Nick Fury, they talked to Samuel L. Jackson. They're like, hey, we want to base this character, Nick Fury, in this new universe on you. And from what I've read, he said, hey, that's cool, as long as when you guys do a movie, I get to play him. They said, alright, and the Ultimate Nick Fury became a black guy that looks just like Samuel L. Jackson. Fast forward to current time, they started putting out the movies, the Marvel Cinematic Universe movies. Nick Fury shows up, he's played by Samuel L. Jackson. I'm cool with that. Moving along, more recent times, after the movies are hit, Samuel L. Jackson's a big, everyone loves him as Nick Fury. So now in their regular universe, they've got a white Nick Fury, who I've been following him for years. I like the white Nick Fury. I also like the Ultimate Nick Fury. Don't get me wrong, but they're each in their own place. That's not good enough for Marvel. As I said, they had that 6-issue Battle Scar series just for the sole purpose of bringing a Nick Fury into the regular Marvel Universe. It was black. And I don't know, they went as far as they had him shave his head, they had him have an injury, so he had his scar. It looks just like the Marvel cinematic Nick Fury, the one you see in the movies, shows up on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I don't know. In fact, I probably would have even liked it better if they would have done some time thing and had the regular Nick Fury switch places with the Ultimate Nick Fury. That would have been better. Maybe it wouldn't have irritated me as much. But seeing as they went as far to do a 6-issue miniseries just to create a character that's already there, I just find it, I don't know. They worry too much about lining up the movies with their comics. And part of the problem is because at this point they've all but decimated their Ultimate Universe. Rumors that they may be ending, but they've tried it before ending and they keep bringing it back, so I don't know what they're doing exactly. But, I mean, Captain America, they've changed him in the comics so he looks more like the movie, which the movie was, again, more based on the Ultimate Captain America from the Ultimate Universe. His mask was more of a helmet. Without the wings on the side, I think was painted on. They're now doing that in the regular universe also. So, I mean, currently in the comics, they have Sam Wilson taking over as Captain America, and they have Thor turned into a girl. I've mentioned this before, I'll mention it again. The Sam Wilson taking over as... I can see that sticking around, especially if Chris Evans is tired of playing Captain America in the movies, wants to retire. I could see them handing the role over to whoever it was that played the Falcon in Winter Soldier. I forget right offhand. I believe it was, let me check IMDb real quick, Anthony Mackie. So I could see them handing the role of Captain America over to Anthony Mackie in the movies. That doesn't bother me. It seems kind of organic in the story. I'm fine with that. I don't like the fact that turning Thor into a female, because to me it seems like it's just a grab for attention, for new readers. It's not going to work. For one, I mean, there's been a female Thor before. There was Thor Girl. There's other characters that could have taken on the mantle of Thor, female-wise. Also, I don't see this being a long-term thing. In fact, they got Avengers 2 coming out next year. Avengers 2 has Chris Hemsworth, which is a guy, as Thor. I don't see them keeping a female Thor at the same time as they have a male Thor in the movie. Because again, as I said, they're trying to line the movies up with the comics. In fact, they went as far as, in the Spider-Man titles, they had Dr. Octopus switch minds with Peter Parker. So Dr. Octopus was running around Spider-Man for a year or two in the comics. And as I predicted, the same month Amazing Spider-Man 2 came out, they got rid of Doc Ock. They brought Peter Parker's personality back in, his mind, and Peter Parker was back being Spider-Man because they had a movie coming out. So I predict by next May, Thorette, as I'm going to call her, will be out, and the regular Thor will be back in. I could be wrong. I've been wrong before, but that's another story entirely. But that's my thoughts on Marvel. They're just trying way too much to line their movies and their comic up. And I think it's just, I don't know, I'm not in charge of Marvel. I don't own a billion-dollar company, so it's hard for me to make that call. But overall, I'm not as happy with Marvel now as I was back in the 80s and 90s. Maybe it's just me. Time will tell. Enough about Marvel. Let's move on to DC. Currently, they're calling their new titles branded as the New 52. It started 2012, I believe it was. After Flashpoint, they rebooted the DC Universe into something called the New 52. But they didn't do a total reboot. Much like Crisis, they left a few things. This time they left Batman and Green Lantern mostly untouched. So in the new continuity, it's only been 5 years. Batman's gone through 4 Robins. Really bad teammate, if you ask me, if he's gone through 4 Robins in 5 years. They didn't want to get rid of Batman and both Green Lantern was both popular. They were undergoing, Had great writers on them at the time. They didn't want to lose those, so they kept everything with that, but they rebooted everything else around it. Which to me, it seems like they didn't learn their lesson from the Crisis. Because after the Crisis on Infinite Earths back in 1985, they spent the next 20 years cleaning up the mess that was left behind. And they have gradual little reboots here and there trying to fix things, when if they would have just done a clean reboot and started from scratch, I think things would have been a lot better. And I think the same thing now. They should have just done a clean reboot and gone from there. But as far as the current DC Comics, like I said, right now I am reading a lot of their titles right now. They're not all great, but for the most part they're not too bad. Personally, I prefer the old Suicide Squad that was written by John Ostrander. In fact, quick little plug. That's the subject of my Task Force X podcast, which can be found on iTunes and my website at Head Speaks. But yes, the Suicide Squad, I prefer the John Ostrander's version, and also the old Teen Titans, which was written by Wolfman and Perez. I am reading the current Suicide Squad and the current Teen Titans. It's not bad, but it's just not quite the same. Part of the problem with the New 52, in my opinion, is what I refer to as the CWing? Makes sense? Of the DC Universe. For instance, Amanda Waller, founder of the Suicide Squad, is now skinny and not as intimidating to me. Previously, she was a little shorter, heavy-set woman who, the current Amanda Waller, and maybe it's just me being sexist, but she, more beautiful woman. I don't know if she got where she's at purely by her intellect and her ability, and how much of it was flirting her way to the top. Again, it could just be me being sexist. I have been called that. Oh well. The old Amanda Waller, she worked her way up. She wasn't afraid to get her hands dirty, and you could see it in her. I don't know, it just... maybe just me. Also, until recently, Floyd Lawton, Deadshot, also of the Suicide Squad, let's try that again. Like I say, with the New 52 reboot, Floyd Lawton was a bit younger, and they removed his trademark mustache. It looks like in the new book they've just rebooted. They give it back to him. But, again, everyone in the DC Universe has to be younger, better looking. To me, it seems like it lost a lot of its diversity with the New 52. In the old continuity, you had characters that were overweight, weren't as good looking, were older. But now everyone's got to fit that CW, which is a TV station if you're not familiar with it. That's where The Flash, fantastic show, and the Arrow's at. But everyone's got to fit that younger, early 20s model, which to me, it lacks a lot of diversity. Even though they are trying to diversify it with different races and what have you. But they're all good-looking people. Whereas, like I said, the old continuity, it wasn't quite so much of, they've got to be young and pretty. But maybe that's just me. What do you guys think? Let me know. Also, as I said, I think it was last episode, I am enjoying Futures In for the most part. I'm not going to go into that because I've already touched on that, but I'm still enjoying the main story. Also, Batman Eternal right now, it's a pretty good read. The art is hit or miss. Different artists, so sometimes it's great, sometimes it's less than stellar. As I said earlier when I was talking about Vigilante number 50, some of these Batman Eternal issues are some of the ones I'm referring to where the art either is real dark and not dark in a dark and Batman type of dark way, but it just looks unfinished to me. Looks amateurish. I don't know. Maybe it's just me, but I prefer a lot. There is some good artwork in the title, but it's not consistent. Also, I say part of it may be me being old, but personally, I don't think the comics coming out in the last decade or so is quite as good as they were in the 80s and early 90s. Yes, fuck you. I said the early 90s. I know that was part of the decline of comics with all the gimmick covers. You had Image, which was a comic company based solely on artwork. But a lot of that art back in the day was really good compared to what they have nowadays. Before the whole Image wave and they started writing for the art for the trade paperback, those are some great stories, in my opinion. And as I mentioned earlier, DC had their Another Crisis, which they called Flashpoint. And as I mentioned, they didn't seem to learn their lesson. Instead of doing a clean reboot, they're just keeping bits and pieces. And at this point, who really knows what's in continuity? Yes, kids, I said a dirty word there. Continuity. I don't know if this is really a place to get into continuity issues, so we'll go ahead and put a pin in that for now. Maybe I'll hit on it in a future episode. And my last real gripe about current comics is the price of them. When I started collecting comics in the mid-80s, the late 80s, comics were between 60 to 75 cents a piece. Now they're between, $2.99 and $3.99? Sometimes $4.99 for a regular 22-page comic. Is that inflation? It doesn't seem to be adding up right, because back then minimum wage was $4, I want to say. It's been a while. Now it's like $8, so it's doubled. Comics have more than doubled in price. So I don't know if it's inflation, if it's the paper gone up quite a bit. But if comics 75 cents, even a buck and a half, it's easier for a kid to go down there and plop down a buck or so and buy a comic. When comics are $3 or $4 a piece, it's harder for a kid, to go out there and plop down that much money for one comic when they buy video games for $40 or $50. The comic you read, we read a comic in 5 minutes. A video game you can play for hours on end. Me, I can play one for months and not clear it. But, kids nowadays, they can clear it within a week or two, probably. Guessing. So, that's the other part of problem with comics nowadays. It's getting too expensive for what they are. The stories aren't as good, in my opinion. It costs too much, in my opinion. And that's where we're at. What do you guys think? Do you guys agree with me? Again, am I full of it? What are you guys reading? Let me know. Go to my blog. You can get to it by going to my website at headspeaks.com. Click on Headcast, and then you can go to my either Headspeaks or my Task Force X blog. Leave a message. Or you can find me on Facebook or Google+, both searchable under Headspeaks. You can also email me at headspeaks@headspeaks.com. Either send me an email, or if you want, you can send me an MP3 file with your voice comments on it, and I'll play that on the air. But write in, let me know what you guys think. Again, with your thoughts, we can make this a better podcast. Anyways, before I move on to my final segment, let's go to one last ad I just received for a great podcast I just discovered. Hold on, kids.
Star Trek. Comic books. Mythology. Video games. Toys. Star Wars. Just about any geeky topic you can think of could be covered on the Hammer Podcasts, presented by two true freaks. Come join me, Gene Hendricks, for whatever my disjointed mental processes can come up with, and be careful, or you might just learn something before we're done. The Hammer Podcast is available monthly, both on its own iTunes feed and at twotruefreaks.com.
And now, for my final segment.
On your mark, get set. We're riding on the internet.
For porn.
I got a fast connection, so I don't have to wait.
For porn.
What? There's always some new site.
For porn.
I browse all day and night.
For porn.
It's like I'm surfing at the speed of light.
For porn.
Internet porn, Roman orgy scenes. Internet porn, dominatrix queens. Internet porn, girl on girl on girl on girl on girl on guy on sheep.
You're going surfing on the internet.
is Head going? This week, Head is going to archive.org/details/Internet Arcade. The Internet Arcade is a web-based library of arcade, which is coin-operated, video games from the 70s through the 1990s. They've got games on there such as Burger Time, Congo Bongo, Dig Dug, Super Pac-Man, Cubert, Moon Patrol. A lot of great games from my youth. I recently discovered it on Facebook, and every once in a while I'll go there. Like I said, I've got most of these games, if not all these games, on ROMs, somewhere on a disc in my house. But I just find it really cool that you can go to the internet and play these old arcade games online. It brings back my childhood. It makes me smile. If you want to check out some of these old games, again, go to archive.org/details/Internet Arcade, and I'll have that link on my website also. But yeah, go check it out. That's where Head's going. And before I close out today, one final thing. While it's not breaking news, as I'm a little slow getting these podcasts out right now, it is news. Glenn Larson, the creator of such great shows, I believe he had a hand in Quantum Leap, but he was also producer on a million shows I watched growing up. He was producer on some of the $6 Million Man. He was producer on Quincy M.E., the Hardy Boys Mysteries, Battlestar Galactica, BJ and the Bear, Buck Rogers' 25th Century, The Misadventures of Sheriff Lobo, Magnum P.I., The Fall Guy, Knight Rider, Manimal, Automan, a bunch of great shows that I grew up on. It was fantastic. But anyways, he passed away recently on November the 14th, 2014. He died in Santa Monica, California from esophageal, I can't pronounce that, damn it, cancer. Basically, his throat had cancer. Again, a lot of people said a lot of his stuff he did was rip-off or reinterpretations of other work, but again, a lot of the stuff the man put out, I watched and enjoyed as a kid. So, Mr. Larson, my hat goes off to you. A big bucket of win, and as they say over at Hollywood Babylon, you will be missed. But that'll do it for today's show. Go ahead and, again, send me, as I've been saying, send me an email to head@headspeaks.com. I'll read it on the air, or if you want to record your voice and send it to me, you can send that to me as an MP3 to head@headspeaks.com. Go to my website, headspeaks.com. You can click on where it says Headcast, and then click on Headspeaks, and that'll take you to my blog with further information from today's show and links. You can leave a message there. You can go to either Facebook or Google Plus and search for Headspeaks. I'm on there. Like us on that. Friend us. Leave them a message. I need to hear from you guys. I would have a Talking to Head section where I read letters, but I haven't gotten anything, so I know you're out there. Come on, Romero. I know you like hearing your name read on the air. Send me an email, buddy. Somebody. It's quiet over here. I'm all alone. Help. Hello? Hello? Alright, enough screwing around. I'm done for the day. Thanks for listening. And before I sign off, let you know the final song today, nothing really came to mind. Nothing really jumped out at me to play for today. So I'm going to play H.R. Pufnstuf by The Murmurs from Saturday morning cartoons Greatest Hits. Check it out. After the end credits, check out the song. Let me know what you think. Talk to you guys. Bye-bye. And thank you for listening to another great episode of Head Speaks. Be sure to look for me on the web. I can be found rambling on the Task Force X Headcast, where I cover all the appearances of the Ostringers, Suicide Squad, and the Checkmate comic books from the late 80s, early 90s. My home on the inner tubes is my official website at headspeaks.com. 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 Links to my blog, which contain follow-up information to this and every headcast, can be found there. I am on Facebook at Headspeaks, the community, not the page. The community, the page is somebody else. On Google Plus, look for Headspeaks. Please feel free to email me your bitches, moans, and gripes to headspeaks@headspeaks.com. Also, feel free to email any compliments you have also. In the meantime, be sure to join us here next time for another fun-filled headcast from your friendly neighborhood brotherhead. And be sure to tell a friend. Until next time, I'll see you in the funny pages. Now, HR Puffin Stuff by The Murmurs.
HR Puffin Stuff. Who's your friend when things get rough? HR Puffin Stuff. You can't do a little 'cause you can't do enough. Once upon summertime, just a dream from yesterday. A boy and his magic golden flute. Heard a boat from off the bay. Come and play with me, Jimmy. Come and play with me. And I will take you on a trip far across the sea. But the boat belonged to a kooky old witch who had in mind the flute to snitch from her broom room in the sky. She watched her plans materialize.